hi everyone. Thank you for joining the TEA's skills session. So today we have Justin Martin with us. So Justin Martin is a two-time Thea Award-winning designer and one of Blooloop's top 50 influential people in themed entertainment for 2021. Justin has experience working at Universal Creative, Thinkwell Group, and most recently Meow Wolf on a variety of projects, spanning from Jurassic World, the ride, Meow Wolf Convergence Station, Universal's Volcano Bay Water Theme Park, Epic Universe, the making of Harry Potter Studio Tour, and more. Today, Justin will talk about his career in themed entertainment and what he does within the industry, give a brief demo of how he does his work, and then leave plenty of time for questions to hopefully give some insight to students on how to proceed in the industry. So, Justin, you're free to take it away.
Right on. Sydney, thank you so much for inviting me and everybody else for having me here. I'm going to have you come around with me and give me that hyped introduction everywhere I go, because it's just the biggest ego boost. But again, thank you for having me here. I had chatted with Sydney a few weeks back now, and it was always great to have I love talking to students and kind of being able to just give whatever kind of knowledge I have about being in this crazy industry. So yeah, basically, let me pull up my put together a little PowerPoint show. Let's see, how do we do this? All right, let's see if this works. Let me know if this doesn't work. We're gonna give this a try. Come on. Okay, cool. Does everybody see the presentation screen, or do they see the other one? See the presentation screen? Cool. Okay. So I have no idea which one is on which. So yeah,
I see the one with both slides.
The timer and stuff. Okay, that's what I was gonna say. Here we go. Okay, I think this one's it now. Is that better? Hopefully that one works a little better. Okay, stop me if it doesn't go through. Anyways, so yeah, hi, I'm Justin Martin. So yeah, I've this is my, I guess we're going into almost year 7 of being in the themed entertainment industry. Basically, we're going to kind of go through all that fun stuff. So basically, like I said earlier, we're going to kind of have a minute, get to know each other, get you to understand who I am, where I came from, all that fun stuff. And then we'll kind of talk about a quick little demo, and then we will leave it open for some Q&A, because I think that's probably going to be the most valuable out of all of this, really. So who am I? So I like to always start with my favorite and biggest inspiration is Randy Powell. So if you guys haven't read the last lecture, we were talking about books earlier on. This one is the best one I think anybody can read, hands down, period. Randy was a professor at Carnegie Mellon and had some time with in the tech space, but also working with WDI for a long time. And he does this incredible lecture of the things he wants to pass on before he passes away. And so one of his most infamous quotes are, "We can't change the cards we're dealt, it's just how we play the hand." And I think that is the most telling thing of just my early career. And I think it's the best way to look at your careers as you guys are just getting started, and kind of how to tackle an industry that is kind of upside down right now, especially during the pandemic, but also just in general when things are going all peachy. So for myself, I grew up in New Jersey, so I can empathize with the snow and the cold weather that y'all are going through right now, and took a lot of frequent trips to Walt Disney World. So I was really fortunate to be able to do that growing up as a kid, and it was incredible. It really sparked my interest for themed entertainment. My mom and dad always joked that oh, we would go and you would always say oh, I want to work here, I want to do this. Little did I know, I didn't necessarily want to work in the parks, which eventually did. But I wanted to design these places. I wanted to create these incredible worlds to live in and never have to leave, essentially. So during that process, I kind of had the opportunity to go to SCAD, Savannah College of Art and Design, down in beautiful Savannah, Georgia, where I got my degree in production design, so set design, lighting design, costume design, and minored in SCAD's first themed entertainment program. So while I was there, I had the opportunity to learn from a couple ex-WDI designers, incredibly influential on how to like just get a kickstart in this industry. And a lot of the people I got to go to school with are some really, up and coming prominent design people that you've probably heard of at some point or another through Twitter or Instagram or any of that stuff. And just lucky to be around such a like exciting group of people. So yeah, while I was at SCAD, my first year I applied for the Disney College program, got in, super stoked. I had always wanted to work in the parks, so I was like, all right, let's do it. And the real reason for wanting to work in the parks really came from the idea of like, I need to learn how operations work if I'm going to design these spaces, basically. Like what are the break rooms? Where do people, like, how does an evacuation of a ride work? Where do you store like ride vehicles for maintenance? On and on and on. So I figured, what's a better way to do it than on a short little like temporary side journey to on the Disney College program. So I was there for about 6 months, worked at Splash Mountain. Love that attraction for all its whimsy. I'm very excited to see what they do with the upcoming overlay. Very excited when any attraction really gets a new fresh look and design to it. So after that, went back to SCAD for about 2 more years, which took me to the end of my junior year. And I was like, well, shoot, I need to get like a professional internship. And so funny enough, Universal Creative was doing their first round of internships. They had never had like a professional internship program before. And there was no better time to get in that year because they were opening Diagon Alley. So I got to just piggyback and, watch them open what, in my opinion, is still the best theme park land, at least stateside, that's ever been made. And it's just got to work with some really incredible designers and really just like get my first experience being in the themed entertainment industry doing actual like design work. So while I was there, I was an intern for attraction design, and we were working on a small project that had no name yet. We just knew that they were looking for a water park. Obviously, it turned out to be Volcano Bay. And at the time we came in, it was a team of maybe 10 to 15 of us. We had no idea it was going to be a volcano. We had no idea that it was going to be tiki, like Polynesia, like Indonesia inspired. Like it's just this whole plot of land that we just were like, we could do anything with this. And really for my 3.5 month internship with them, it was, let's figure out what this looks like. So it was constant going to work every day, throw out some tracing paper, and let's start doodling. Let's like just add concepts to like, what do the lifeguard stands look like? What are the drinking fountains? What do the rides even look like? Trying to think from that granular level to just what is what's the center icon of the park? And which was incredible. So I kicked it off with a bang and was really fortunate to be a part of that. So post that, went back to school, graduated, but prior to graduation, I was really struggling to find a job. And I was like, I don't know how this is like can be the case. I was like, I'm graduating from a really cool design school, have, some experience in the industry now. What's going on? And I was about a month out from graduation, like constantly getting rejected from interviews, not even getting interviews, and trying to figure out what is going on. And so thankfully, there was a company, Rethink Leisure and Entertainment. They were coming to SCAD to do a last round of interviews with some students. And thankfully, I went and took the interview and got the job later that day. So I had only been out to California about twice on vacation prior to fully moving out here. And so I took the job and called my mom and said, hey, I'm moving to Burbank, California after graduation. Let's figure this thing out. And so I came out here right after graduation to Burbank and worked as a show designer for Rethink Leisure and Entertainment on a few projects, but most prominently Fox World Dubai. The company nor the project exist anymore, unfortunately, but we had a killer team that built a very cool concept package for a park that unfortunately never will happen. So yeah, basically for that project, I got to work on a lot of different lands within the park. Sons of Anarchy, which is just a weird property to work on for a theme park. We had our own Simpsons land. Alien was going to be incredible. Planet of the Apes was not DreamWorks. Blue Sky. So there was Ice Age, Rio, and Epic. So got to just play in like the sandbox of like Fox properties pre-Disney acquisition. And we had come up with just a really killer park in Dubai, but unfortunately, the park funding kind of got eliminated, and so did the rest of the park. And so that kind of goes back to my cheesy little quote at the beginning of all of this. Was like, this is the first like real kind of like weird hand of cards that I was dealt, where I moved out to California, knew like 4 people, rest of my family's on the East Coast, and Fox World Dubai basically gets canceled, and now I'm out of a job. We all get laid off. We're sitting out there like, oh shoot, now what are we going to do now? And so I sat unemployed for like 3 months, and thankfully got picked up by Thinkwell Group, who I absolutely adore. Also out here in I think they're technically in Glendale, California now, so town over from us. And while I was there for about 2.5 years. I worked there as going in as a show set designer, so doing a lot of 3D modeling, a little bit of CAD, and then eventually onto a couple other roles that I'll get into. And so for those projects, I worked on making of Harry Potter tour in London expansion, U.S. Marshals Museum, the Twilight Saga Midnight Ride VR attraction, and a few other really fun and wild projects. Some that are in existence and some that never panned out. But that's kind of the fun part of some of these smaller firms. One of my biggest pieces of advice that I got, I was at the Thea Awards a couple of years ago, and ran into Joe Rohde, as you typically do at any of these events. And I was like, hey man, like, what is like your one big piece of advice as a fresh out of college student? And his biggest piece of advice was like, if you can start at a third-party company that's not, your Disney Universal, hey, you can learn a lot out of that. And coming out of college, I was really bummed. A lot of my friends got into WDI. They went to Universal Creative, and I was like, why? I want to work at the big, budget sandbox. And I felt like kind of was being relegated to this corner of the industry that was just small third-party companies. Not that it was a bad thing, but everybody wants to play with the big boys, I guess. But really what I had learned was that like working at a place like Thinkwell, I was there for about 2.5 years, and I worked on over 50 projects. Like I said, some happened, some didn't. And really with that, like you got to touch so many different things, work with different people, different programs, different like design skill sets were always used. And that I think just propelled me as a designer faster than any other project or company really could have done for me. So I give Thinkwell a lot of credit for bringing me on, and forever grateful to them. And part of that craziness is one day I went into work. It was a Monday, I remember vividly. And they pulled me into HR, and I was like, shoot, I'm getting laid off again. Here we go. It's going to happen all over again. And instead they had said like, hey, you've been recommended by one of our creative directors to go to China. We have a Beijing office. Would you be down to move to China for a couple months? We have a client that's looking to work on they had a theme park. They were looking to redo it basically to kind of bring it up to snuff. And we are looking for someone like you to, go out there and give it a go. So that Friday I boarded a plane with 2 suitcases and went to China for 3 months, which was the most incredible experience of my life. I had been out to China prior to that as just a visitor to go to Shanghai Disney and Hong Kong Disney, and I wanted to just check it all out. So it was like, cool, I kind of know this place. So we got to work on this project really early, like concept development stuff, where I got to lead a team on the creative side to develop a brand new theme park, basically. And so this is just a little snippet. I don't know if the project ever went through. They kind of, once I came back to the States, kind of lost communication, at least on the project side of things. So TBD, but really proud of the project and having the opportunity to go overseas, work with a whole different group of people that, have a different outlook on theme parks, different methods to, and approaches to designing something like a theme park. which was incredible. So came back, worked with Thinkwell for about another year and a half after that, and kind of felt like, all right, I need a new challenge. I love my friends that are here, the people, the projects, and so on, but I needed a new opportunity to kind of go do something else. So thankfully, Universal Creative out here in Hollywood, a much smaller office, but still a mighty force. They were looking for it's the longest title in the world that I've ever had. It was the show set designer for creative show quality for Universal Studios Hollywood, which is a wild title. But basically, it was myself and two other people. I was the only designer in this small team of three. And our job was to like maintain all of Universal Studios Hollywood, not only from like the new stuff that was being built, but to existing attractions, restaurants, shopping, everything. If a light bulb goes out, our job is to make sure that we were documenting it and making sure that we were talking to our tech service team to replace that light bulb, make sure that the colors on the doors in Hogsmeade are accurate to what was originally approved by our partners at Warner Brothers, and just really the vision keeper for the entire park. So thankfully that allowed me to work on Jurassic World, the ride, which was just starting, I guess, reconstruction, you can call it. I believe it was about a nine-month project or so. We were turning around the old Jurassic Park ride to Jurassic World. And part of that for my job was documenting all of that. What colors are we using to repaint the building? What materials are we using? Who is developing and printing and producing the skins for the animatronic dinosaurs? Making sure all that was cataloged, and then also providing creative feedback. So spoilers if you haven't seen the ride. The original scene, not the original scene, the current scene, was it scene 2 or 3 in the ride where you go through the Mosasaurus tank? What happens if one of those screens goes out? Like it's an integral part of the attraction. What are we going to do if something happens there? And working with our team, to figure out what can we do to these different parts of the attraction to have that be showed mode, as it will, for the attraction. Also got to work on dark arts at Hogwarts Castle, which I think is like underrated. One of my favorite projects I got to work on. It was a small, quick turnaround. We got to work with drones, which is freaking cool, and just really proud of that project. Hopefully it comes back sooner rather than later. And a small little look at kind of the documentation stuff I was talking about was like, here is, if you've been to Universal Studios on either coast, honestly, at the Simpsons Land, there's Krusty Land. Krusty's got a giant foam, like spongy child play flooring tongue. It was getting really crusty, and we needed to replace it. So like, what are the colors that we're going to use? Make sure that they were approved by our partners at Fox Gracie, make sure everything was cool. Working with our in-park team to say, hey, you're going to have to redirect traffic into the attraction, so on and so forth, to eventually just replace it, get it done. And the cool part was nobody knew it happened, because that's part of the job. Is like, that was something so small, minor, that we replaced the tongue and it was done. And you got a fresh, new, crusty tongue. The guests aren't ever going to notice that, but it was our job to make sure that they never noticed that the park was looking as best as it could for everybody that was coming through. So back to my favorite quote, that you never know what's going to happen. And so my time at Universal came to an abrupt end one day. They were reorganizing the department, and more or less decided we didn't need a designer on the team. We could use anybody else for that. So we're going to let you go. Okay, no worries. And so funny enough, the night before that happened, my former coworker at Rethink, Jenny Weinblum, she reached out and was like, hey, I've got a job at Meow Wolf as an art director. Are you interested? And I was like, no, I'm good. I love my job here, Universal, love LA, don't want to move to New Mexico. But thanks for considering me. And then funny enough, 24 hours later, I was on the phone with her being like, yes, I would love to interview for that position. And ultimately ended up moving out to New Mexico to be the head art director for Meow Wolf Convergence Station, which is just the absolute love of my life as for a project. So for those who don't know Meow Wolf, I'll get into this one a little bit more deeper, because it's still kind of an abstract company and slight diversion, I guess, from the themed entertainment industry as a whole. But Meow Wolf is a artist collective based in New Mexico. They've got 3 attractions open, I guess 4 technically. We have Omega Mart in Las Vegas, House of Eternal Return, the original project in Santa Fe, and Convergence Station in Denver, but then also Kaleidoscape, which is a small shooter dark ride that is at Elitch Gardens right down the street from Convergence Station. So there's kind of a Meow Wolf cinematic universe that has been built within each of the projects, and you can kind of go from one to the other and kind of experience a story that is interconnected. So I think the next one is a video, so it's only like a minute and a half, but it kind of shows you Convergence Station. So hopefully it works. Let me know if it doesn't. And it's kind of gives just a brief overview of what the heck is inside this giant white building in between a bunch of freeways. So let's see if this works. Took a second last time when I tested it out earlier. Of course, it's going to make me look bad now. Okay, I think it's starting now. It's loading. Okay. Of course.
I might have you reshare your screen with
Ooh,
the audio
yes.
shared.
Yes, let me do that. Here, let me stop sharing and I'll reshare again. Sorry, 1 second. Does it show the Meow Wolf image of the girl sitting in the little thing? Is that what's showing up on the screen there? Okay, cool. Hopefully this works audio wise. Let me know if it doesn't. Okay, I think it has to reload again. 1 second.
I don't think the audio is working still.
Odd. Okay. I'll just talk over it a little bit because it's, for the most part, it's just a lot of like really trippy music and whatnot. But if you definitely get a chance, take a look on YouTube and it'll have the fun audio clip to it. But yeah, so basically the entire exhibit is a 5-story building that has about 150 artists that are based in Denver that contributed to the space, on top of the countless hundreds of artists that are a part of Meow Wolf in Santa Fe. And basically, we build this giant building and throw a bunch of these very interesting worlds. We have the ice world of, I believe it's Numina, Emia, C Street, which is kind of a Blade Runner-y inspired street, obviously, and Catacombs, or ossuary as we call it. I'll get to the pictures in a sec. There's some more pictures. There it is. So yeah, there we go. But yeah, so this is kind of the final look at what these different 4 worlds are. The idea was that there's these converged worlds that you take a magical elevator to, a la Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, and you pop out in these different worlds full of just immersive spaces, but also like really interactive art as well. So different spaces have art that has been produced and created by the 150 artists in Denver, but also some local to Santa Fe and a part of Meow Wolf proper. So basically my role in that was just making sure this looked good from start to finish. So we came in about 3 years ago. It was the year before the pandemic started. And really just starting in the design phase. Some of it was already well into design. We had ideas of where things were going to go. And basically my role was coming in and making sure it was one cohesive experience from a design level, making sure each space had a proper look, feel, story that was being told. How was it, how was it going to get built? What were the pieces that we wanted to bring into the exhibit, and then how are we going to make sure that they fit into the space as a whole? And I'll get into that a little bit more in our little demo session to kind of show like what does an art director do from design into the field for the most part, which I think is a really interesting process. So basically opened that this past September. Geez, it's been already that long. And left Meow Wolf and moved back here to Los Angeles. And kind of floated around, was seeing what was going on in the industry. If anybody has looked at it in the industry, it's pretty quiet right now. There's a lot of reorganization going on. We've got Disney moving down to Orlando as a whole from WDI for the most part. Obviously Epic Universe is going, but that was down in Florida, and I've got my girlfriend lives out here in Los Angeles, and I was like, I can't leave her again after doing 3 years in Denver. So basically it was like, all right, I got to get back here. What are we going to do? What cool, exciting things are out there that might not necessarily be themed entertainment, but are still a really interesting avenue for design and entertainment as a whole? And which led me to OC Vibe, which is my current project. I'm the senior art director for experience design at OC Vibe. And I will do my best to try to describe it to you because we are actually just as a whole still trying to nail it all down. So OC Vibe is this massive 98 acre complex that's being built by the Samueli family, who are the owners of the Anaheim Ducks out here in Anaheim. And it's this massive work, live, play, entertainment, retail, vacation destination. I kind of, for my theme park fans, I kind of liken it to like if Epcot and Disney Springs had a baby, that's what you're getting out of this thing, but also mixed with professional sports. So we've got, there's hotels, there's, really incredible shopping and dining locations. There are apartment complexes, offices, the whole gamut. And it's really an awesome space that is also so heavily digitally integrated, and I can't get into too many of those specifics just yet, but it's really going to be an interesting way to look at entertainment as a whole. We're branding it more or less as as a smart city, and there's very few of those projects that are out in development at the moment, but we think it's going to be kind of the next future of a work, live, play environment. Kind of like I said, like the original Epcot. Okay, so that's my career so far. I hope it was somewhat interesting and informative on that side of things. So I'm going to show you some process stuff. The first 2 slides are kind of just how does an idea for me go from idea, or how do I ideate? I know everybody has different ways of taking pen to paper, sometimes it's digitally, sometimes it's an engineer doing something. Everybody has a creative way of showing how to take an idea from one step to the other. And this first part is for a project that does not exist. It's just a fun fake theme park project a few friends and I are working on. And then the second half of it is the art direction of, a small area within Convergence Station, kind of just showing how something like that kind of comes together. So process, yay. So our original idea for this is we each took a land in our fake theme park. So I was like, cool, I'll take Main Street, kind of inspired area. So I was really digging this like weird Jules Verne, but mixed with like turn of the century, but also like steampunk inspired. So I will do something. I like to work in SketchUp just because it's simple. It's free for the most part. And I take that, throw it into Enscape. So I play with, what's the architecture going to look like? What are the perspectives? How does everything gel together? I like seeing that really in 3D space for the most part. And then I'll take that into Photoshop and just doodle right over it. Like that's where I'll add a lot of the details. So I'll take, okay, cool. This is what the architecture is going to look like. What does the trolley potentially, kind of feel and look like? And this kind of just makes the space feel a little bit more alive. It's quicker to do something like this than put all these small little details into a 3D model. Really just allows you to be very loose and flexible with kind of the whole space. So usually this is how I work on just about every project, stuff for OC Vibe, from Meow Wolf to, Thinkwell and Rethink. A lot of it is just SketchUp, throw it into Photoshop, doodle over it, pass it on to the next person. Part of that is like the one of the best pieces of advice I had, and I think we had talked about this when we chatted, Sydney, was like, you don't have to be the best artist in the room. I think a lot of people think like you have to be able to come out and paint or draw like Mark Davis, or be like the most incredible illustrator like Greg Pro. You don't. Like you can the best piece of advice I also got, aside from the Joe Rohde one, is like, as long as you can put down an idea on paper and other people understand it, like that's your starting point. As long as you can get people bought in on ideas, that's where you need to go to be a designer in themed entertainment. So I like to kind of look at it from like, let's start small. Here's concept, bing, bang, boom. So let's pretend this is, we're taking this project further. And we go a little bit crazier, and we're going to pretend we did that same stuff, but from Meow Wolf, because I didn't have any sketches that I could find for that space at the moment. But so we'll take it a little bit further into a building like this. So we have what we called for short Ice World within Convergence Stations. We had created a 3D model. What's it going to look like? How does this fit? We kind of built this off of our SketchUp and integrated models from the architects. How do we build something like this, really? How do we go from the concept on paper to reality? So we start with the SketchUp model. And then this one we take into Lumion, which is really a fun program if you haven't played with it. It is a fly-through render program that you could put people, lighting, the whole thing. And let's see if this works. So yeah. There's no audio to this one, so don't worry. But basically, it kind of allows us to fly through the space. What does it look like? Kind of get the vibe of what we're kind of feeling this thing to look like when it opens. Like, what is the guest walkway going to look like? Like, what's the experience walking through this very tight corridor between our cathedral and the rockwork that we were going to put in? How far out can the rockwork go? What does it look like in the space perspective, and kind of just sell the idea to not only the artist, but whoever we're showing this to, investors, other creatives, marketing can use this to understand what we're going to build, and kind of go from there. I was like looking at these are always fun. And then so we'll take something like this, and for myself, I like to build these art direction packages. We use these kind of in every company I've worked at. But for example, we had our mech here, and it was like, okay, cool, we've built it. How does it integrate into the space? What are the textures? What's the feel? What's the story behind it? Like, what do we need to take into account when we're in the field, actually putting it together, encapsulating it into rock? So we knew our mech, we wanted it to be, it was the ice world as a whole, the planet, the story more or less is that like the planet used to be very populated. It was thriving. Originally wasn't even an ice planet. And then there were some cosmic events that set the planet off course. And everything started to freeze over, and you are visiting some of the last remnants of ice world. So we wanted to make sure that was encapsulated in our rockwork, architecture, and scenic design. So part of the reason these art direction packages ended up actually being great is the pandemic hit, unfortunately, but we had to scale back our on-site crew. So not everybody was going to be able to be there, aside from myself and a couple other designers. So now we could take all this information that we got from the original designers and put that into these one, massive, more or less Bible of Meow Wolf Denver, and have an idea of what we needed to keep into account when we were developing it in the field. So part of that process for me even is like, what does the rock work look like? How are we going to make this, how does it fit together? Like, what is the look? Scaling, how do we make things look right? Are we achieving the look of the original concept? Where, are the top of the ceiling has projectors on it? Like, let's make sure the projectors are being blocked so that you can't see that stuff. Where's lighting being hidden? So we do all these different studies. Then from there, we work on building actual physical 3D models to kind of just get an idea. Right, let's see how this fits in the space, make sure it's to scale. How much is it going to cost to build something like this? How much rockwork, concrete, rebar are we going to need? And we find that out by taking this into kind of these models that are a little bit more painted and a little bit more of an actual art direction model. If you've watched anything on Disney Imagineering, I think it's like episode 4, 5, or 6 of Imagineering Story on Disney Plus. They talk about like the chips that they create when they built Expedition Everest or Cars Land, really anything that involves rockwork now. They take a 3D model, they scan it, and they chop it up into little bits, and then they weld it into place on site. That's exactly what we did here. We knew exactly, as you can see, all the different things are numbered. We knew that block number 72 had to go in that location. It was going to look like this. Let's bend it, bring it into space, put it in place, and kind of go from there. So all that's going on, we're building and installing different pieces from different fabricators all over the place. So on the top left, we've got the big rock bridge, and we have our 2 mechs kind of being put into place in the field before we start to really encapsulate that in the rock work. And then rock work starts, which is like, this is the most fun part in my eyes, because you get to watch like the space really transform and be sculpted. So we had an incredible rock work designer that we pulled from Disney, Greg Ballinger, who is incredible. He worked on Galaxy's Edge and is still with Meow Wolf. And we developed all these rocks and started sculpting the whole dang place. So part of my job, sorry for the blurry picture, I can't find a better one, but this gives you a little bit of an idea of what my day-to-day was. It was going around the space. This is one of the other spaces, but it gives the same idea of like, here are notes. These are things that we need to knock up this area. The paint needs to be knocked up 15%. This should have a drip running down from it. Like, what's the story being told? How do we tell a story non-verbally about what the placemaking of this space looks like? And we did that for everything. And, bing, bang, boom, there it is. It's done. Simple as that. But really, there's a lot of steps of massaging it back and forth to get it to where it needs to be, which is ultimately this final product. When it's all said and done, taking it from that paper to construction, working with hundreds and hundreds of people. I always like to shout out my incredible team that was on site. This is only like a fraction of them. This was as we turned over the keys to the project to operations. We were done. We were very excited about that day. But the whole point to me putting this slide in here is that like I am one of many hundreds of people that touch this project and all my other projects, and the exciting part is you get to work with some incredible people regardless of the company project. The team that you are around is your family for the most part, and really everybody brings something to the table in some different aspect, and none of these projects happen obviously without any of them. But yeah, for the most part, that's my process. And then we can keep some time for Q&A if anybody's got questions. My one thing, my former producer, Jenny, who I mentioned earlier, I was having dinner with her the other night, and she had brought up a really interesting topic. If anybody has questions, I'd also love to hear from you. What inspires or interests you? I don't want to sound like an old man. I'm only 29. But I like to know what everybody else that's younger than me is into. Is it now I'm gonna sound really old. Is it the TikTok or what's getting people excited? TV shows, movies, technology, what what excites you or any of that. So if anybody has any questions, when you ask a question or anything, I'd love to hear anything that just gets you really excited to get up in the morning. But aside from that, before I turn it over to that, if anybody has any other questions after this, if you have none now, something pops up later, or you just want a real exciting Twitter or Instagram to follow, you can feel free to follow me on any of those things. I love chatting with everybody and usually like answering questions if anything else pops up. So aside from that, I've talked enough, I guess. I will leave the floor open if anybody's got any fun, exciting questions to chat about.
Thank you, Justin, so much for that wonderful presentation. You've already had such an incredible career, and I can't wait to see what you do next.
Thank you.
I can start off the questions and then just to get us started. And then anyone who has any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. It looks like Caitlin, more of a comment than a question, but anyone who has a question, feel free to unmute yourself or put it in the chat. But I can start us off and ask, for anyone who's interested in pursuing a career similar to yours, what do you think are the most important skills or softwares to learn, and what do you think the best way is to become comfortable using them?
Yeah, so that's definitely like a two-part kind of thing. So best skills, that's I think actually maybe the bigger two-part thing. It's a personality thing, but also like an actual hard skills, obviously. Like personality wise, like be somebody that people want to work with, like come excited but like ready to bring cool new ideas. So the amount of times I'm in meetings and people are just throwing out cool stuff that they've gone and done that I've never heard of, and I'm like, oh, this is amazing. And then I go down a rabbit hole for an hour after I get back to my desk, like just searching all this cool stuff. So that's part of it. On top of that, like be a student of the industry. Not so much, the way I like to say is like be a student in the sense of like, you could be a big fan of Disney or Universal or whatever, knowing fun facts about it is cool, but like knowing like what makes things work or like what's the cool thing out there. For example, for a project, for work the other day, we were talking about like what's cool like restaurant design look like right now. And so over MLK Junior weekend, my girlfriend and I took a trip down to San Diego, and we went to a fun bar, Raised by Wolves. It won like Bar of the Year in 2019, I want to say. And it's this incredible speakeasy where like you sit in these chairs, the wall spins around, and then you end up in an actual like different bar. It was incredible. Drinks are amazing, the whole thing. But it was like, cool, these are these different things that are happening outside of like the traditional theme park industry, and knowing those things, you can bring that stuff to the table. So really being educated about like what entertainment out there is moving the industry forward, like incredibly valuable. Aside from that, skill set wise, it really depends on what you're trying to tackle like as a career, I guess. So I think you might have said like for myself, I knew that like my skill sets needed to be more in the design side of things. So I focused a lot on like the sketching, doing 3D modeling, and then even some writing I like to do, just because sometimes it's easier to just throw down a bunch of words and go like, this is the vibe that I'm looking for this space to be. How do we make it look good? And go from there. So kind of like I showed in the process there, like sometimes it starts with a 3D model, sometimes it starts with just a really crappy sketch, and then it goes from there. And then sometimes it starts later on in the process where as an art director, sometimes I don't do really any sketching, and it's kind of just overseeing a team that is doing the work and providing feedback of understanding just what is working, what is not working, how do we make this design better, how do we make it more cohesive, so on and so forth. So if you're looking for something more on the design path kind of thing, because that's what I could speak to probably the best, SketchUp is great. Like I said, that one's free. The one I'm actually even just learning myself right now, Blender, is another free program. It's like Maya 3ds Max, but it's free. I love free, especially as students. Like you can't get better than that. And that stuff is being used by all these industry leading companies. So, Universal Creative's using SketchUp and Blender. Like it's not always as difficult, I think, as sometimes people make it out to be, where it's like, I got to know like the most crazy program. Sometimes, you just got to know how to, like I said earlier, get an idea down on paper, whether it's actual paper or it's in the 3D world. So that's a real big piece. And sketching, like keep a sketchbook everywhere you go. I have one that I keep right next to my desk at all times. And it's just like, what's a quick thing I've got an idea for something that we might not be working on right this second, but could be come in handy later. Or like, oh, I've got a random idea of something that I just want to design, and you'll doodle it down or whatever. And after a while, like that practice really just, it becomes a part of your life, and you get better and better and better at it. It's the way I like to kind of use the analogy of is, if you go to the gym, you're going to be in better shape, mentally, physically, whatever the case is. And you want to build up that muscle. It doesn't happen right away. You don't become the Rock overnight, but you go enough, you can turn into the Rock, I guess. Maybe not, but the same idea applies where like you want to just really practice this stuff. That's really what it comes down to is, doing stuff for projects, sure. Doing your 9-to-5 job, great. But always like spending the time to like really hone in on your craft and continually get better is really the best thing you can do, especially when you're getting started, to try to just learn as much, soak up as much as you can. And really find like what interests you, because you might be like, I hate sketching, or I hate doing 3D modeling. I love writing. I love doing technical design. I like doing show set packages, or I like doing scenic painting. Like there's a bazillion different, pieces you can go into within the industry itself. So it's really just spending the time to figure out what gets you excited to get up in the morning. Because it's a very fun industry, but you definitely want to know what you like doing out of it, or else it might not be so fun.
Yeah, great answer. Thank you so much. Anyone is free to ask any questions. Just go ahead and unmute yourself or throw it in the chat.
First off, thanks, Justin, so much. That was really good. And my main question was, so based off that big concept for OC Vibe, as I'm starting to get more into perspectives, how do you deal with what seems to be so many perspectives, obviously more than 3 points, and make it looking realistic? What is your process for going through such big concept designs with so many details?
Yeah, it's thankfully that rendering was not mine, so I can't take credit for that. That was one of our architecture firms, but it still applies for like when you do something like that. It sometimes is basic, like the bird's eye view that we did for Fox World Dubai. We had done a whole SketchUp model of the entire park and put it in one big thing, and then sent it to our illustrators, and they kind of took the best out of that. If you see any like bird's eye views of any theme park, more or less it's done the same way, where they take the model, paint over it, and usually it's kind of like in big broad strokes. I always like to like watch on Twitter and stuff, different theme park fans like really try to like pick apart all the small details in concept art, and a lot of the time you can pick out specific things, and sometimes it's just supposed to be like, here is a generic-ish broad stroke of like, this is what we could put in here. So something like OC Vibe, that one image that was on there, like has a lot of very specific pieces that are a part of that project. So for there, we kind of are working with different teams. So the architecture team that's going to design, the hotel or something, they've got a concept model of, all right, this is what the hotel is going to look like. Or we have a piece that's going to run through the middle of the space. That team knows what that's going to look like. And we kind of just put it all together, and then each team is talking to each other along the way of, obviously on the technical side, figuring out how everything's going to look, how it has to be integrated and pulled off. But then also not always shown in that those big images. There are like smaller side images that are like, okay, cool, let's talk about in Fox World Dubai again, in the Sons of Anarchy land, we have our main street where the main characters are going to appear. It's outside of our main attraction. Well, let's figure out what each of those shops look like. Let's get into the nitty gritty, do a quick sketch of like, okay, cool, we want to put an awning here, there's going to be a bunch of oil barrels here, and a character meet and greet is going to appear back here, kind of thing. So it's usually in those big perspective ones, it kind of is more of just a big general idea of what the space can look like, and then usually off to the side there's a lot more granular kind of design that happens. Yeah, does that answer? I hope that answers a little bit of it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. It gives a bigger idea of what I'm dealing with. Yeah.
Yeah. Usually, like I think the biggest thing is like you don't always want to also put a ton of information in those big bird's eyes, because I think then that detail just can bog down what the overall look of something is. So I think like for that OC vibe rendering, that area, it doesn't have a lot of some pieces shown because we want to give a certain look to that space. That space, or trying to dance around the OC vibe thing. I'll use a different project, but for example, like so for Meow Wolf, for example, like when we're doing a big concept piece for Ice World, we want to use a lot of those times those images, the big bird's eye perspective drawings, to kind of really just give like, what's the feel of this space look like? We know these are the colors, this is the vibe, this is the emotional reaction we want to kind of elicit from this imagery. Not necessarily always getting to the like, okay, but if you go over to this corner and you tap this RFID scanner, this is going to happen. We know that's going to be in there. We don't necessarily need to always show that in every kind of piece. So when doing any of those kinds of pieces, definitely think like the big picture first, and then like where you can add some of the smaller stuff, great, but definitely be careful that it doesn't detract from the overall message and point of a big bird's eye piece like that.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah. Anybody else?
I can ask something.
Yeah.
What would you say is a good way to find like companies or jobs or like something along those lines that like really values creativity? Because you seem to have done a good job with that.
Yeah, absolutely. The best thing to do is, obviously y'all are already a part of the TA in some form or fashion. So their website is a really good database. Blooloop is the same thing. I think they have a database of like all the companies that are going on out there. And part of that is also kind of like to the first question of like, what skills do you need to get in here? Part of that is like when you are open to or knowledgeable about what's going on in the industry, or like just keeping an eye out of like, hey, who's building what, who's doing this and that, you kind of start to find you go down the rabbit hole of like, for me, when I got home from Raised by Wolves, I went into it like a deep dive of like, who builds this stuff? What other projects have they done? And then I find like, one of my other favorite, I was like, sound like a crazy like bar connoisseur, which I'm not by any means, but I just like going to the cool spaces. But out here in LA, there's a group, Houston Hospitality, for example, and they do incredible bar spaces, No Vacancy, Good Times at Davy Wayne's, a bunch of others. Definitely check them out. They have some really cool immersive spaces. But to bring this full circle, I find that out because I go like, this was a cool place I went to on a Friday night. Who did this? This is, like, and then you kind of go down the rabbit hole of like, okay, this is this company. They've done this. Let me reach out to them. Do they have a Facebook? Do they have a LinkedIn? Do they have a Twitter? Like, how can I just make sure I'm following all their socials to keep up with what they're doing, and kind of going from there. So really the biggest part of this industry is knowing the different companies, educating yourself on who's out there, by kind of just seeing what's going on in the industry. And then the biggest thing is networking. So like reach out to anybody and everybody in this industry, try to like connect with them on LinkedIn or whatever social media platform of your choice. See if they'll hop on for like a coffee Zoom session for you for like 30 minutes or whatever, and just pick their brain. Because the amount of people you can talk to, and you could talk to anybody over at Thinkwell, and you're going to get like, okay, cool, I get the vibe of what Thinkwell is. This is their company. Oh, let me talk to somebody at Universal Creative. Cool, I get the idea of how they view the process of building these kind of experiences. And you kind of can get an idea of like what companies, what they value, what they're trying to do, who they're looking for, and kind of get a decent sense of that. So that's really how I've been able to work at some really wildly creative places, is I kind of just try to get to know as many people as I can and go like, cool, let me bookmark this person. I want to be able to reach out to them and say, hey, let's work together at some point, and kind of go around that way. So it's kind of a convoluted answer, but hopefully that also answers your question.
No, that was great. Thank you.
Yeah.
you touched on it a little bit, but how does money and, well, financing and funding deal with the creative side? Not really how does it like cooperate, but like how much say does creative have in financing and sort of pushing and poking and getting their way to what they want?
Yeah. Oh God, I hate those questions. Not that question, but I hate when that stuff comes up in the project because it's a very valid question. Like the amount of stuff we had planned for Convergence Station that gets cut because it's like, okay, at some point we have to cap like the money that we're going to spend on this place. And that happens for everything. From the biggest companies like a Disney that's spending $1 billion on Galaxy's Edge, to the smaller fish in the pond like a Meow Wolf that's like, we're a scrappy group from New Mexico, we're gonna pull this thing off with the money we're finding in couch cushions. Really a lot of that comes down to like similar to those fly through video that I showed earlier. Was like, cool, this is the idea, this is the concept that we're going for, let's sell it. And so we'll take that and that'll go to like different estimators. They'll say, okay, well, there's a whole division that is just like, we will see how much X is going to cost based on the square footage. And they kind of get an idea of like, cool, rock work is going to cost this much, lighting is going to cost this much, flooring, tech, art installation pieces, painting, blah, 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 labor. All that stuff is going to cost X amount. Cool. And then we do that for every space. And then we go through and go like, okay, our budget there is X and it needed to be Y. Okay, well, what do we do to get that closer to that number? Like you can set out on a budget of like, I'm sure Disney said like, we're going to spend $500 million on Galaxy's Edge. And then they end up with a number closer to $1 billion or whatever it was for Galaxy's Edge, even if that number is incorrect to what they've even said. But like, you can't always account for things that are going to happen in the field. People, things take longer than they should. They're not built properly, or they have to be redone, whatever the case is. So you can try to plan for as much as possible on the finance side. But then as it pertains to the creative side of things, a lot of the time that like those fly-throughs become really valuable because you're selling the space. Well, if you cut this, then you lose that. If that is a big piece to how we're going to sell this space as an immersive creative environment, then we can't get rid of said thing, whatever it is. And so it kind of has that back and forth of like really massaging, like, okay, you want to get rid of this, you want to get rid of that, you want to do this. And there would be times where we kind of just created like a laundry list of like, pick 3, like you can keep 3 of those. And then it was like, cool, these are the 3 things that are like integral to making whatever space in Convergence Station very important, and then we go from there. And then a lot of that stuff gets pushed to phase 2 on many projects. Sometimes they happen, sometimes they don't, but you can kind of try to find ways to integrate stuff like, cool, we'll run the cabling for an interactive that's going to be located at this location. It's going to sit behind the wall, it'll be turned off. The minute we're ready, we'll pull the wires out, we'll hook it up and done. So sometimes you'll do those preemptive pieces to get things ready for when phase 2 happens, because expansion always happens with any project. So it's always kind of that back and forth of like, can we do this, can we do that? There were things that were in Convergence Station that were originally not planned because they got cut for budget reasons, and then our executive team would walk through the site and go like, now this thing's going to be too important, we need to re-add this, and we would re-add something back into the space. And cool, we got a little extra funding for it because they saw cool, we can, I don't know, on their side of things, we crunch more numbers, and yes, we can afford to do this, let's do it, because the return on that is going to be worth us doing in the long run. So that happened a couple times. So yeah, sometimes you try to sell it really hard at the beginning of, here's the big grand idea, give us all the money. They're going to tell you no. So you have to cut back a little bit. And then you hope that when you're actually building something and you're in the field actually installing it, and you have the people that are in charge of the purse strings, that they look at that and they go, oh shoot, this is really dang cool. Let's throw a couple more bucks at this thing and add that. And then and you hope for the best at opening, because there's definitely been a few projects I've been a part of where it's like, dang, we've cut so much, it's now down to like a bare bones thing, and it kind of loses its original vision from what we originally set out to do, which is where you kind of have to try to get strategic of like, all right, what looks good, what is not necessarily needed, so we can keep the overall look of whatever the attraction or whatever we're building. So yeah, finances are the like ugly part of things, but also a really big part of it. I bring up Imagineering story again now because I was just recently rewatching it. And I think again, Joe Rohde, there was, I can't remember what episode it was. I want to say it was the end of episode 5. If you go back and watch, he talks like very cryptically, but it's like the best line in the entire series, where he kind of talks a little bit about like the problem with Imagineering or building any kind of big budget themed entertainment projects is that you have the creatives, but more or less that like it's creative people trying to build these massive billion-dollar experiences, but they're being run by people that are looking at it more as like a residential, like commercial business side of things. They're looking at it like, well, you can just build a flat ride of a carousel and theme it to whatever, and it's going to still bring people in. Why are we going to spend the money to make something where, you know, the floating rocks of Pandora, is it really going to be, is that doesn't make money for you, unfortunately. It's a cool thing, and it makes that space cooler, that maybe, yeah, sure, maybe it drives people through the gates a little bit more. But in the end, that thing is not making money for the Walt Disney Company because those things are floating above there. So it kind of is that back and forth argument that constantly is happening of like, where do we try to make it where it's like, you know, hey, this is a cool thing for the sake of the art form, but also for entertainment purposes, but also here's the return on investment. You could see the numbers and go from there. Because I've been on many projects where, you know, people will go like, you know, hey, this is this water feature. That water feature isn't bringing in money into the gift shop. You know, cut the water feature. You know, add, you know, a couple 100 square feet to the gift shop so we can sell more stuff. And that happens because it's viewed more as a as I like to call it, theme parks are malls that are shopping with some rides that are in there on the side. And it's a like sad way almost to look at it, but like in the end, a lot of people look at it from that perspective on the financial side of things. And it's kind of finding those ways to convince them that like, hey, the idea is strong. It's going to bring in $1 bazillion. You know, let's do it. And I think Disney has shown that with, you know, when they redid DCA, like it was, hey, the product's not great. Let's redo it. Let's add some stuff that's maybe not going to bring in cash in every location, but as a whole, it made the park a more enjoyable space to be in, which ultimately brings traffic through, merch sales, beverage sales, the whole thing. So yeah, so that's my long-winded answer again of of the finances stuff, but it's a really interesting and tricky dilemma that you run into as a designer working in this field.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just trying to get a bigger picture of the ecosystem that theme parks work through, and of course, all the talk about Bob Chapek, all that stuff. Yeah,
yeah, and I think like, you know, it's a fair thing, like for someone like, you know, I won't sit here necessarily and defend Bob for a lot of his decisions, but like I think that's like a really great example of seeing like, hey, like he's looking at it from the finance side, like, hey man, like he came from like Disney Store, I believe, if I remember correctly, like he's the guy that started the Disney Vault, which if you don't know what that is like they would make it like difficult for like limited releases of like VHS tapes of animated classics for Disney. They were available for like 6 months. If you didn't get your purchase of Pinocchio, it was going to go away and you never knew when you could buy it again. Obviously the world has changed dramatically on an entertainment scale, and going from there, but he came from the Disney Store side of things. So you can see like it's that moment of like, oh, okay, we've got somebody that's running the Disney company as more as a retail experience rather than a, you know, immersive experience entertainment place that also sells stuff, which is a very wild kind of concept of how to run an organization, I guess, like that. Whereas you look at, I guess you can look at Universal Creative with the original Hogsmeade and then eventually Diagon Alley, like really kind of setting the modern age tone of like build an immersive land, pull out all the stops for, you know, the scenic, the tech, the rides and attractions that go into that space, but then you can sell wands for $60. Like you're going to put people through Ollivander's wand shop, and who is not going to spend $60 after they've gone through an experience that the wand shows them or whatever. whatever. Or same thing, I guess, for the lightsabers at Galaxy's Edge. Like they found ways to integrate retail, but in a creative way. And I think when that's done successfully, I think that's where you have that really nice merge of like the money crunching side department, and then also the creative side, and everybody kind of gets their way. So yeah, I think it's definitely gonna be interesting to see how a place, you know, like WDI that's being run from more of a fiscally conservative, I guess, kind of mentality of like, how do we maximize our profits, but kind of take down the amount that we're putting maybe out into the parks. And whether that works or doesn't work, you know, I guess kind of remains to be seen. And we'll kind of see where it goes from there. And kind of go, yeah. So I think it's like a while. I could talk about it for hours and hours. I could go on like the Star Cruiser thing, not to get nerdy. I'm fascinated about that. Like, where is the market audience of something like that? What kind of design work has to be done on a creative side to really sell a upcharged experience at whatever $5,000 that it's going to cost you? How do you take something like that and sell that concept? Like, hey, we've got this idea for a, you know, real multi-day LARPing experience. Basically, it's a crazy cool creative concept, but how do we sell that and make it work so that, you know, we're going to make a profit off of that stuff? Those conversations happen from like that level where this is like potentially the next level of themed entertainment to, you know, something as basic as we are going to, you know, open a new, you know, or, you know, we're going to open up a new gift shop in Universal Studios or something like that. Like it's very fascinating to watch. But I think that goes into the educational factor that I keep bringing up, is like, pay attention to that stuff, because that stuff is like, you'll learn how to kind of see how different companies and different projects are trying to, you know, work around a lot of those constraints that are being put on them creatively. Yeah. I'll stop rambling on my finance talk.
No, I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm not trying to talk bad on Bob Chapek. I mean, he's doing a little better than
no.
But it's good to like see your thinking about all of that, because obviously you've been in the industry.
Yeah, it's really, I think, fascinating. I think it's only like to even be blunt, outside of the theme park industry, like I think that, or part of the theme park industry outside of Disney, is like we're in a spot right now, like the only big company really building stuff. Obviously Disney's wrapping up a couple projects, but Universal's going obviously full steam ahead with Epic Universe, which is going to be exciting to watch, you know, how that project comes to be. But for the most part, like we're still in the pandemic to some extent here, you know, and a lot of companies are still hesitant to push forward with building something that's brand new. And so I think it's really interesting to look at like the financial side of like, all right, who's building stuff, what kind of money and resources are being put into certain projects, and, you know, where are the opportunities for careers and stuff. So I think it even leads into like, when you're searching for jobs, who's building stuff, like who is potentially looking for, you know, for projects that are going to go forward. And for me, that's how really I ended up with OC Vibe, is, you know, there was not much out in the world of themed entertainment out here in LA at the moment. So I was like, cool, let's try something new. Let's see, this is a project that's going to go forward. You know, regardless of what's going on in the world right now. And let's, you know, I say that knock on wood, I don't want to jinx it. But like, you know, let's find interesting other forms of immersive, creative, themed entertainment experiences, attractions. Let's find ways to kind of bring the themed entertainment experience to things that and projects that might not have initially been a themed entertainment experience. And kind of try to find those creative avenues that are out there that are just not maybe the traditional route of things. And that's one of my other big pieces. I don't even know if I said this yet. Like, because the themed entertainment industry is a little quiet right now, not to make it like sound like you guys are all screwed, because you're not, I promise. But like when it comes time to look for internships, jobs, or any of that stuff, like I really like can't stress enough of like, look elsewhere too. Like, not in a bad way. Like don't drop the dream and the passion, obviously, but like I found when I was interviewing for companies, like there was this like hunger that companies had for how we know we want to build something really kick-ass. How do we do that? Like, how do we make something awesome? We're a group of a bunch of, not to talk bad about any group of people or anything, but like we're a bunch of industrial designers. We need somebody that's like got a immersive creative mindset coming in. How can we add that to our team? Cool. You're a person that can do that stuff. You've got a knowledge of what's going on in the industry, but you also have a portfolio that shows that thing. Cool. Let's partner the two together and build a shopping mall that is, this wildly different experience. Or, oh, we need something smart. We need a car wash or something. And it's going to be a car wash unlike anything else that's been out there before. And like, there are these different companies that are looking for just creative people in a physical world kind of space. So my side tangent of like, hey, where to look for after college stuff, like there is a real exciting world of opportunity out there that's a little step side from the theme entertainment experience. Excuse me. But it could very much use people like us that are excited to build something really impactful. But yeah, so that's my other side conversation.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I've never thought about that before. So
yeah,
it opens up a new avenue for sure.
Yeah, I think Cindy and I had chatted about like, pardon me if it wasn't us, when we had chatted on our side conversations. But like the one I had heard a lot of like excitement from was experiential marketing is like a really hot industry right now that are looking for people that are in themed entertainment. Like the people that build these awesome booths at Comic-Con a few years ago, I think it was at Comic-Con, they did a full like Blade Runner, was it 2052? I just forget the name of the year in that movie, whatever it is. They did like a whole experience that was like, we're going to bring you into the world of Blade Runner and we're going to like serve you drinks and food that are part of it. And we're going to have characters walking around, but then also we're going to take you in the back room and show you the trailer for the movie that you'll hopefully go and watch at some point. And it really kind of just hypes up the space, but it was incredibly designed and it felt like a immersive themed entertainment project. And it was done by a marketing company. So those kinds of places are really exciting and they're quick turnarounds, quick builds. And that's just a whole nother, example of another industry that is looking for, themed entertainment minded designers to come in and provide expertise and skill set and a different way of thinking to kind of enhance their overall product and what they do. So.
I don't think that was our conversation, but I will definitely be looking into experiential marketing after this.
Yes. Yeah, take a look. If I can shout out a couple of them. I know Giant Spoon is fantastic. They do some great work. I think they're primarily in New York, but they also have an office out here in LA, I want to say, and Myco too. They are out here in Pasadena, another great group. They did the South by Southwest Westworld project a couple years back. Check that out. It's freaking incredible. But yeah, like you can dive deep into these like wild different avenues of like, oh, this is still themed entertainment. It's just done in a less traditional inside of a theme park setting. And sometimes they're even cooler, which was like part of the experience of going to a Meow Wolf. It was, like theme parks are awesome. As I said, I didn't want to leave Universal. I was kind of forced out the door, which was fine. It was the best thing that happened to me, honestly. But it was, let's go to something a little bit different. And then, opening up a Meow Wolf was cool. Now we're doing something that's wildly different in the industry. How do we kind of take that to the next step outside of Meow Wolf? Who else is interested in stuff like that? And kind of going from there. So I think you kind of can continue to add, different forms of themed entertainment, to your toolbox. I think it just only makes you a better designer and sets you up better for the future. So explore everything, try everything. Disney and Universal will always be there. Thinkwell will always be there, hopefully. So yeah, that's the time to have fun, especially when who knows what the heck's going on with the industry. So.
If anyone has any remaining questions, feel free to interrupt me, but otherwise, I would just like to really thank you again, Justin, for your time and for such an informative and entertaining presentation. Everyone should go reach out to you separately or follow you on your socials. I mean, Justin is a wonderful human being to just chat about all things themed entertainment with.
Thank you again so much for having me. I love talking to y'all. Yeah, if you're ever out in LA, let me know. We can go to one of my favorite immersive bars. No, but yeah, if you have any other questions as things come out, feel free to hit me up, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for your time, and
No
everyone
problem.
have a great night.
Thanks
Yeah,
so
you
much,
too.
Justin. See
Thank
ya.
you, Justin.
No worries. Thank y'all.